Fallout 76 is about to enter into a pretty interesting transition point. The second DLC wave just concluded this past week, and the next one doesn't start for a couple of months. We know it's coming at some point in November. That next one is the Wastelanders update, a hugely anticipated new DLC that should take this game back to what a lot of people were hoping it would be from the beginning, adding in some of those single-player-esque features, dialogue choices, human NPCs, and true consequence. Now that I have my review of the latest DLC out, as well as some of the updates that came along with it, I felt it a good time to make this video, to take a second and think about, or actually look at, what Fallout 76 needs to succeed, at least based on my perspective, somebody who's been covering the game through its entirety and actually playing it pretty regularly during that duration. If you play the game now, it's pretty obvious player morale is at a fairly low point, even player count seems to be at a fairly low point. We don't have any explicit player numbers, but if you actually look at the top played games on Xbox, you can see that Skyrim Special Edition and Fallout 4 have more players than Fallout 76. And speaking generally, you don't really want the older games to perform better than the newest one. That's not always a good sign. So looking ahead at my own Fallout 76 wishlist, or really more specifically, what I think this game needs to succeed, there are a couple of very low-hanging fruit. Feature additions that we really need, or components of this game that just need to be updated or improved. One of the first and most obvious is the bugginess of the game as it stands right now, and really lack of stability with some of the updates. Fallout 76 has had a consistent problem with just having bugs. This was present on release, it was present 6 months after release, and now 10 months later it's still there. It's definitely gotten better, it's not quite as bad as it was on launch, but it's also gone through almost waves. There are times where it's relatively bug-free, but then an update or two later, some new bugs are introduced. They may linger around for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, then the game maybe is a little bit more buggy, or some of the new bugs are a little bit more game-breaking or noticeable. That really should never be a thing. Fallout 76 shouldn't be getting updates that add in new bugs and put the game into a notably worse state. Fortunately, Bethesda has been very proactive in patching this game, sometimes not as quickly as we would hope, but even just today there was a new hotfix added, patching two of the long-withstanding bugs. And although that's great, I'm really happy to see that, again, those were long-withstanding, like month-plus, pretty game-breaking bugs, making it so the social menu wouldn't work without a game restart, and that you would basically break the game when exiting power armor. Those are two things that happen a lot. Those are just two of the more recent examples, but really the point I'm trying to drive home here is, first, there's a lot of existing bugs that need to be squashed. There's a community-managed bug list that is pretty long. It's been there for a while. But even further, this whole updating the game and adding in new bugs, especially when they're fairly large new bugs, really has to be stopped. Whether that mean better internal quality control, a public test server so the community can just break the game and tell you what happened, I have a genuine concern that Wastelanders is going to deliver. It's going to be just as cool as they're describing it as, just as cool as it seems like, but on release it's going to have a bunch of bugs with that update, making some aspects of it enjoyable, but have like that little caveat. I'm really hoping by the time that update comes, we're going to be past that when an update ships, we'll be able to be mostly confident it'll be issue free. Compared to right now, when an update ships, you can be mostly confident it's going to have at least one or two new bugs. I would say that's the lowest hanging fruit by far. Outside of that, one of the other major issues I'd love to see resolved around this game is, well, the endgame. Really the fact that there isn't an endgame. This has been a problem since launch. Some of the DLCs have added in more around the endgame, but other DLCs have actually taken away from that. Right now, Fallout 76's endgame is really just kind of grinding for god tier legendaries. There's some exceptionally rare items in this game that are really, really good, and just consistently grinding towards those, or hoping to get as close as possible, is how a lot of people will spend the endgame. This typically will involve grinding specific events that give you guaranteed legendaries, but actually with one of the more recent DLCs, it's made it a little bit harder to consistently find certain events, leading to some frustration in that department. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the regular players of Fallout 76 are actually based around the legendary economy, whether it be grinding them themselves, active in the trading community, trying to barter with others for their legendaries or to dump their existing ones. Bethesda certainly has made some improvements in this category. We got the legendary vendor adding in a lot more options as far as legendary farming goes, and actually re-rolling selling legendaries, and the vault raids, although being pretty unstable, are now a way to actually get guaranteed 3-star legendaries, which you couldn't do previously. I think one of the big problems or questions around this is that the ideal endgame? Is it just giving you several different ways or options to actually grind out legendary weapons? To me, that's not a ton of fun. I think to a lot of people, that's not a ton of fun, but to some of the existing audience, it is, but I don't think it'll ever reach mass appeal, because I would argue the second part of that is, even after you get that god tier legendary, there's not a ton of really great applications of it. Even with my not god tier legendary and mediocre build, I could do 95% of the things in this game with relative ease. Like, okay, yes, maybe with a god tier you could solo the Scorched Beast Queen while I have to have help from a few people, but is that really the goal? I think one potential solution is just additional vault raids, less dependent on server stability or just with improved server stability. Vault 96 is coming, maybe Vault 63 also. Maybe change up the formula. Don't do the puzzle-based vault raids we see right now, but maybe a horde-based one with some stupidly difficult boss enemies that requires a lot of coordination. I like the difficulty of the vault raids. I think that part of it they got right, and I think taking that same idea and expanding upon it or modifying it slightly could actually give you, one, a new way to actually grind for these legendaries, but also a new way to actually use them, or really a justification for having something that is so powerful. But again, that brings me back to my original question, is that the ideal endgame? Just farming for and grinding out legendaries? It definitely won't appeal to everyone, but I honestly don't see a great alternative, at least right now. We also do, of course, have the story component of this with Wastelanders. Hopefully we will have some true replayability, which right now just doesn't exist in the game. You play the story, you get the same story every single time. There's no choice or consequence, no different avenues you could have taken. You could just do things in a different order, but it's the same result. With Wastelanders, hopefully that will be different. You'll have replayability and kind of an artificial endgame in the sense that you'll be able to redo things and actually get different outcomes. And we also know with the Wastelanders updates, we're getting the legendary perk system that I don't think will totally solve the problem, but it's another thing to grind towards. But speaking of all that, I would say one of the other aspects of this game that has really been highlighted to me over the past few months is the content distribution, and really the mismatch in content distribution. It's hard to gauge the exact numbers on this one, but if you just take a look overall at some of the new content that's been added in through some of the DLCs over the past year, compared to how much new content got added to the Atomic Shop over the past year, there's probably 4, 5, maybe 6 times as many new outfits, armors, weapons, things like that on the Atomic Shop. Again, that's just a rough estimate based off just my head. I'm not really going off anything concrete, but even just as a concrete number, the game has gotten a couple dozen new outfits, that in the form of free content. If you actually look at the Atomic Shop right now, there are way more available for sale, and this isn't even including all the things that have been delisted, as they do that periodically to keep it fresh and clean. Now, I totally understand that Bethesda has to make money. They're making money through cosmetic microtransactions, so sometimes saving some of the coolest stuff for the shop is necessary. But just with some of the recent DLCs, it feels like that's almost to an extreme. Like take Meat Week, which was really the last time we got new apparel items in Fallout 76. These are some of the new items we got in-game. A chef's hat that is fairly basic, you could get it in a couple of colors. An apron that is also kind of basic. Comparatively, this is some of the new stuff that was added to the Atomic Shop right around the same time in the following weeks. It's pretty clear that as far as the free game goes, you're really not even getting like the B tier stuff, but like the C tier stuff, where everything that is remotely good is getting added to the Atomic Shop. I think another example of this is even with the most recent vault raids. Through this, you could actually unlock some new power armor skins. This adds in a new effect to your character, and this is what they look like, which, okay, that's fine. But if you compare it to some of the power armor skins that have been posted to the Atomic Shop, the ones in the Atomic Shop just look way cooler, way better, and something I'd way rather wear on my character. I'm not saying Bethesda shouldn't be monetizing this game, or even really should cut down in the Atomic Shop, get rid of the pay-to-win non-cosmetic stuff, but as far as the cosmetic stuff goes, okay, whatever. It just, with such a mismatch being present, sometimes it kind of sucks. When new DLC comes out and all you could get for free is a couple of hats, it kind of burns a little. You just wish there were some new cool armors added into the game for free, while there really hasn't been. None of the new stuff added to the game for free has really stuck out to me as being particularly awesome or a great addition. And to prove this point even further, just going in game and fast traveling around to some people, you'll find the vast majority of them are wearing things you could buy in the Atomic Shop, not things you could earn for free in game. There's a clear mismatch there. I think even just picking out a couple of those armors from the Atomic Shop and putting them in game for free would be a nice thing, a nice gesture to the community, because that certainly has been lacking over the past 10 months. And this last point's a little ranty, but it really did bother me. The armors they showed off in the Wastelanders trailer, as cool as they looked, are actually available on the Atomic Shop also. You have to pay to gain access to those. They're not a part of Wastelanders. I'm not entirely sure why they were even shown off in the trailer. Maybe some of the other ones will be available for free, but at least some of the initial ones that are out right now you can get. You just have to pay extra money for them. Community controlled servers I think would be another great addition. Mod support obviously also, but I think they're not going to do that. I've actually made a full video on why I don't expect that anytime soon, but community controlled servers have a lot of potential. Maybe just a dedicated role-playing server, where if you jump on that, maybe you could pick up a power armor, a couple of weapons, and go into some PvP combat, Brotherhood of Steel versus Enclave. There's a lot of potentially cool things you could do with community servers, and I think it's something we need in this game now. As far as some of the other minor things that I just think would all around be nice additions, some kind of gambling or mini games for people to play with each other. I actually could see myself playing quite a bit more if you could bet caps at little blackjack tables or other kinds of gambling in game. Add in a caravan table people can place down at their camps, and I bet you'd get a lot more people just hanging out at camps, whether it be to watch the games or even participate themselves. And if they really want to up the ante, allow you to actually bet certain items like legendary weapons you have, obviously a ton of caps on the table. I think there's a lot of really cool potential, and it would be a fun little side part of the game that could relatively easily be added. Even further, factions and faction warfare would be another really cool aspect, whether that just be community made clans or even just joining some of the major factions, then having little events where the two factions go head to head. Maybe some kind of camp warfare or base defense added in with that. Overall, as it stands right now, I think Fallout 76 is in a really interesting kind of transition stage. In a way, we're almost moving on from the old, moving away from what the game once was and into something very different. The new DLC is going to be distinctive. It's not going to be like how the existing game is. And Bethesda describes how all future DLC is going to follow a similar formula. I imagine with the drop and release of that, we'll see a lot of other changes, other new content getting added to the game, an influx of new players that are actually just starting with the game for the first time. But I would argue Fallout 76 is still something with a lot of potential. Even with a lot of the problems or bad decisions that have been made around it, it certainly could be a game that has the year of 2020 that actually has its comeback then. Either way, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. How do you feel about what I talked about in this video? What do you want to see get added to Fallout 76? What's your wish list? As always, again, I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.